Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Global Millennial Model UN School. So I hope everyone is having a good time and are now ready to listen to our first session of the week. And I would like to welcome every delegate here, every future delegate in MUN to our school. There will be 4 sessions in total. And in each session, we will talk about and discuss about a specific topic about MUN. Before I join, I perhaps would like to encourage all of you to perhaps open your camera if it is possible, so that I can see your faces while we're discussing in this class. And again, before I continue the session, let me introduce myself. My name is Abdur, and I will be your mentor for the next 2 to 3 weeks, where we will have 4 sessions with specific MUN topics each. I graduated from Faculty of Law, Universitas Indonesia, and I am now currently working in Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a future diplomat, but currently I'm still waiting for the whole administration process. And I am now trying to fill up my time by attending classes like GMMUN School as a mentor. I have been a mentor in GMMUN since last year, since January 2021. So there has been around, if I'm not mistaken, there has been around 10 to 11 batches maybe that I have taught in all of the GMMUN schools. So I am really, really glad that I can meet the new batch right now in January 2022. And we will be conversing in full English since one of our delegates comes from outside of Indonesia. So to make the class inclusive, I will use full English, but don't worry, I will try to speak as slow as possible so everyone can understand. Now, before I start, I want all of you to introduce yourself, but since we got a lot of delegates right now, you can introduce yourself using the Zoom chat box, using this template. Okay, now you can go to the Zoom chat box. Please introduce yourself by writing this template consisting of your name, your city, and your current grade if you're in high school or your semester in college. For example, Abdur, Jakarta, 7th semester from, let's say, from UI. Okay, so using that template, feel free to introduce yourself. There's no need for you to converse using your microphone. So you just use the Zoom chat box. Okay, welcome Diana from Banyuwangi, from Unair, Surabaya, yeah, in the 3rd semester. We also have Nagifa from Tangerang, and also Nisa from Jakarta, Aulia Yasmin from Bekasi. Okay, so perhaps an interesting fact for GMMUN School, everyone. We are conducting our class consisting of delegates ranging from both high school and college. I even attended a session where one of the delegates comes from a junior high school. So it's very, very, I will say very, very distinctive. It's very, very inclusive in terms of age. So please, everyone, feel free to introduce yourself and get to know each other. And don't feel afraid if you're still in high school, or don't feel afraid if maybe you're too senior in college. It doesn't matter because we're here learning and we're learning together. I see that we got a lot of delegates coming from different cities. We have Tangerang, Palembang, Bandung, and we have Zlice from Malaysia, and who is now learning in Bali. I see. Now I also see Surakarta, Bandung. I guess we can see a lot of cities in Indonesia. Okay, thank you everyone for introducing yourself. I hope you guys have a great time getting to know each other. Now I will move on to the session. So does any of you have ever attended an MUN previously before you joined the session? Anyone who have joined, perhaps you can inform me through the Zoom chat box. So I'm assuming that everyone here is new to MUN. So before you get to know MUN, I would like every one of you to understand what the United Nations is so that we can understand MUN better. United Nations is actually an international organization consisting of countries from around the world. So it is an organization just like what you see in high school or in college. You may know OSIS, right? Student Council. But the members of the student council are the students of the school, right? And then, for example, the student executive bodies in colleges, the members are the students, the college students in that campus. But an international organization is a different thing. The members are countries. They're not people. They're not humans. The members of an international organization are countries, and these countries, they make up an organization called the United Nations. And why is it called an international organization? Because the members of that organization consists of countries from around the world, and it does not belong to one country only. Okay, so that's the definition of United Nations. While the definition of the Model United Nations itself, or what we call as the MUN, you can see here that MUN is a simulation of the United Nations committee proceeding. Right? Remember the highlighted words in orange, UN committee proceedings. Why do we call this UN committee proceedings and not United Nations simulation only? The reason behind that is because we have a lot of bodies in the United Nations, right? We have a lot of committees under the United Nations. If you take a look at the United Nations chart that I sent earlier, you can see that maybe some of you have heard about UNICEF, UNESCO, United Nations Security Council, and a lot of other United Nations committees. These are all the bodies that you will simulate under the UN system, right? The body that can be simulated in MUN is usually any organ that exists and linked under the United Nations system. Model UN is also an opportunity for all of you to experience a policy-making global education program. So you will represent a country in an MUN. This is the second feature of MUN. The first one is what I have explained earlier. You are attending an international organization simulation. The second aspect, the second feature of MUN is that when you enter into a Model UN, you are representing a country. So you're not representing yourself as a person or as a human being. You are there to represent a country. So whatever comes from your mouth, whatever comes from your perspective at that meeting, it represents the official policy of a country. So for example, if I'm attending an MUN and I'm representing Indonesia, everyone who hears me speak, they will be assuming that what I say is what Indonesia believes in. So if I say Indonesia believes in the protection of human rights, or maybe if I say human rights is fundamental to the lives of everyone, it's not my opinion, it's Indonesia's opinion, because I'm representing as a delegate of Indonesia. Okay, that's the very basic feature of MUN that you need to understand before we move on to the more complex details of MUN. Okay, so MUN participants, you guys will participate as what we call delegates. You will play the role of diplomats here in global committees, in commissions, in councils, representing the interests and also the policies of a member state. So a country in a United Nations system, if they are a member, we call them a member state, which basically means a state or a country that is a member to the United Nations. Kak Abdur, does that mean that there's a nation or a country that is not a member of the United Nations? The answer is yes. There are countries that are not categorized as the member of the United Nations because they don't fulfill the requirements of a country, for example, or even they don't fulfill the requirements that the United Nations have set upon them. So that they are a country, they're officially a country. Some countries recognize this country as a country, but they are not officially registered as a member of the United Nations. So I hope it differentiates the meaning of member state and a country in general, right? That also sets the differences of how you can interact in MUN. Okay, that's Model United Nations in the super general glance. Okay, I'll continue. Now we will first talk about the definition that we usually find in MUN. The first one is council or committee. It is, as we have explained earlier, an international organization that is also a place for you to simulate the conference. For example, UNICEF, UNHRC, UN Women, UNSC, all the logos around here that you see right now on the screen, these are examples of a council or a committee. They are part of the United Nations, but they are not 100% the United Nations. All right. So United Nations is a what I would call a superstructural system of all of these, right? International organization, which is the United Nations, has bodies, has committees with its own name. And the examples are UNICEF, UNEP, UNDP, etc., etc. All right. These are all United Nations, but they are not 100% in the United Nations, because the United Nations has a lot of councils and committees, right? That's the first definition. So when you enter into an MUN and then your friend asks you, hey, you joined this MUN, right? What council are you participating in? Or what committee are you choosing? You don't say, oh, I joined the United Nations. No, that's actually the system. When someone asks you the council or the committee, you're going to have to answer the specific body that encompasses the policies that you are trying to address. If you are participating in, for example, I'm going to choose UN Women right here. That means you are participating in an agenda that discusses about women's rights, for example, gender equality, right? But if you are attending, for example, this one, the last one, International Labor Organization, that means you are participating in an agenda that discusses about labor rights. For example, the right to safe working environment, or right to adequate working hours, or you talk about minimum wage or minimum salary for laborers. These are all the topics that are discussed in the specific council or committee, right? So do not expect to talk about women's rights in a council that talks other than women's rights. The same thing goes with the other way around. You don't talk about labor rights when you are participating in UNESCO, which mainly discusses about educational issues. Okay, so that's the very basic council or committee elaboration that we should understand in this definition. Any question before I continue to the second definition? Or maybe you want to ask other questions regarding specific topics in the council or committee, it's also welcome. So you can ask me anything. If your internet is not good, you can use the Zoom chat box. Feel free to ask me at any time, right? You don't need to wait for me to finish the sentence. Just cut me in the middle and I will answer the question right away. All right. So I want all of you to assume that this school is not school as it is, as you can see in real life. I'm not your teacher, I'm your mentor. So we're basically from the same age and we're just sharing stories about what we know so far. So feel free, if you have additional knowledge that perhaps I don't know, feel free to share to the whole class, because this is a sharing session and also a mentorship class for all of you. All right. Okay, I'll move on since there is no question. The second definition is study guide. Study guide is definitely a guide for all of you, but this is not just a regular study guide. It is a guide for you to research and also prepare your participation in MUN. The chair, right? You can see right here, the chair. The chair means the jury, right? If you participate in a competition, there will be a jury, right? The person who will assess your performance and will determine who the champion is. That's what we call as the jury in general. In MUN, the jury is called the chair. But the difference between a chair and a jury is that a jury only assesses the performance. They do not interfere in the competition. They do not tell you what to do. What they do is just to evaluate your performance And then after that, they will announce who the winner will be. But the chair in MUN, not only that they evaluate your performance, they will also lead the session. They will moderate the session. They will determine who will speak. They will determine who will address the topic. But all of these definitely is also restricted by the voting that is currently going on in an MUN, which we will study next week in the next class. What you need to know is that the chair or the jury will make the book called study guide. They will give it out to you before the conference starts. You're gonna have to read the study guide for you to understand what needs to be considered in that committee or council. All right. A lot of explanation, I understand, but what you need to understand is that you don't need to worry. The chair will give you a guide. You're gonna have to read the guide so that you will know the corridors for you to research, right? So that you don't research too much, and also for you not to research too low, right? Make sure that your research is in line with the guide that is made by the chair, right? That's the study guide. Right, now the definition. The third definition is the position paper. So the first one that we've known so far is council or committee. The second one is the study guide. Now the third one is position paper. MUN is a very unique competition, everyone. It is a competition where you're gonna have to do a lot of things, right? You're gonna have to speak, you're gonna have to negotiate, you're gonna have to write, you're gonna have to draft as well. And these are the capabilities that everyone is expected to have in an MUN. And one of those capabilities is writing or drafting. So in an MUN, maybe you see a lot of delegates speak. They have speeches in MUN, but apart from having speeches, they're also expected to be able to write a paper. And one of those papers is what we call as position paper. What is a position paper? It is a paper or a document that contains a country's stance towards the topic. Look at the orange highlighted sentence. Country stands towards the topic. So what is a stance? A stance basically means your position in a topic. For example, there's a topic about vaccination. Does your country agree with vaccination of COVID-19? Or does your country not agree? Does your country disagree with vaccination? If you agree with vaccination, then you write in your position paper that your country highly encourages vaccination programs. But if you do not agree with vaccination, then in the paper, your country has to write that they do not agree with vaccination. Remember, you are representing a country, not yourself. So if you personally agree with vaccination, but when you join an MUN and you get a country that opposes vaccination, then in your paper, you're gonna have to write that your country, the country that you represent, does not agree with vaccination. Okay, so that's the difference between a paper that highlights your country's interest and a regular paper outside of MUN that highlights your opinion. Another feature that we have to know is that a position paper is made and sent before the D-Day of the conference. So before the conference starts, the position paper has to be already submitted to the chair, right? Kapdur, why is it submitted before the conference? Shouldn't we submit it during the conference since the conference has not started yet? The answer would be that position paper will not be debated, right? Every country, they don't debate about each other's position paper because it is a position paper, a position. You cannot debate a country's position, right? For example, Indonesia, we cannot force every country in the world to agree with Pancasila, for example, right? Because every country has their own opinion, has their own position. And that's not the role of MUN, right? MUN is not for countries to force each other's opinions or perspective or points of view. We don't do that in an MUN. We do that only in position paper, but with what we do in the ongoing MUN session is that we negotiate, right? We understand that we have different perspectives. We understand that we have different points of view. We also understand that we have varying opinions about a certain topic. What we do is that we negotiate with other countries so that we reach a settlement, right? We reach an agreement towards a certain topic. For example, if you agree with vaccination and then you meet countries who do not agree with vaccination, what can we do as a United Nations, right? What kind of program that both countries can agree to without violating their own national opinion or national interests? This is the kind of skill that you have to hone in MUN, because we cannot force each other's opinion, but also we cannot sacrifice our national interests just to accommodate others' national interests. This is a capability that we want you to have in MUN, so that in your position paper, you're going to have to write your stance, but apart from that, you're going to have to write your version of solution. What do you think is the best solution for us to overcome the challenge, overcome the issue that we are currently debating right now in an MUN session? Understand? So this is the very basic feature of MUN, and I hope you guys can grasp the general knowledge of what we have to do in an MUN. Okay, before I move on, before I continue, any question before I start with the more complex details of MUN? I know that this is too much for some beginners, but this will be the very first step that you need to make before you step into the next topics of MUN. All right, so I'm gonna have, I'll wait for around maybe 30 seconds if there's any question. Any kind of question is welcome, everyone. There is no right or wrong. Everyone here is learning. I'm also learning right now. So feel free to ask me anything about the topic that we are discussing right now. No question? If there's no question, it means that materinya mudah dipahami gitu ya. I hope it is easy to understand, and I hope that the way I explain it is also understandable. So yes, I will try to continue. All right, I did say it was the last definition, but turns out there's another definition that we have to understand, and it is called as draft resolution. Now, draft resolution is a formal document, but the difference with position paper is that it is made after the session, right? When we want to finish the MUN session, we have to draft what we call as draft resolution. It is basically a position paper, but with different formats. And it is made together collectively with other countries. Position paper is made by each country. So if Indonesia makes a position paper, the creator of that paper is only Indonesia. It's not Indonesia alongside Malaysia making one position paper. No, every country makes their own position paper. But in a draft resolution, it is a paper that is drafted by more than one countries, and the content of that draft resolution is usually debated first, so that what is drafted in the paper is something that all countries in that same group can agree to. And why do I say a group of countries? Because it may be there will be more than one draft resolutions, right? For example, we have 20 countries, right? 20 countries, and there are two groups, 10 countries and another 10 countries, and each of these groups makes their own draft resolution, so that there will be two draft resolutions. But at the end of the day, at the end of the session, there will be only one draft resolution that will be accepted as a draft resolution. If it reaches a majority decision, or what we call as a quorum, right? A quorum, in this case, a 2/3 majority to draft resolution voting, which we will explain later in the next classes because it will be too complex. But what we need to know so far is that this is a paper that is made with other countries as well. It is not made alone by one country only. And the content of this paper is usually debated first, right? That's why if you see at the definition, it is a formal document that contains a result of discussion. And usually draft resolutions have the list of solutions that have been discussed. The keyword that have been discussed. You cannot put a solution where you haven't discussed that solution, right? You need to discuss with other countries first, and if it is agreed, then it can be put into draft resolution, right? And then the draft resolution, once it is finished, it will be voted. Whether the whole council accepts this, it will be voted first using the mechanism that we will explain in the third class of GMMEN school. All right. Again, a lot of information that you need to digest and understand. So you can maybe reread the material and ask any question if you have so far. Also, if you take a look at the pictures, at two pictures, you can see that there's, I don't know if it's clear enough to you, but if you take a look carefully at the first paper at the bottom, it says sponsors, it says signatories, and there's a list of countries afterwards. You can see Albania, Dominican Republic, you can see France, Russian Federation as sponsors. And the next part, the signatory, we have Belgium, we have China, we have Germany. So all of these are countries that agree to this draft resolution, but there are two classifications. First one is a sponsor. This is countries. These are countries who lead the drafting process of this paper. But signatories usually only refer to countries who just agree with the paper, but they don't contribute too much to the drafting process of the paper. We will explain further around the differentiation between sponsor and signatories in MUN, because it is one of the most crucial parts of MUN, right? Okay, any question for draft resolution? Or maybe about the definition or anything related to draft resolution. The PowerPoint, the presentation can be downloaded using the WhatsApp group. So you can go check the group again. There is a presentation material. All right, I get this one question that is sent to me. Sir, I want to ask about position paper plagiarism. Could you explain about that? How do we anticipate it since we made it based on research sources? All right, this is a very good question, everyone. So can we plagiarize? Can we copy a source 100% to our position paper? The answer is definitely no. You cannot plagiarize, but what you can do is what we call as paraphrase, right? So if you take a source and then you see that this information is valuable to my paper, and I want to cite that, I want to refer to make it as a reference in my paper, you can still do that, but make sure you put the reference and also make sure you paraphrase it. What is the definition of paraphrase? Paraphrase basically means you reconstruct the wordings, of that sentence. For example, this is a very practical one. For example, this definition right here, the one that I'm raising my hand on. Let's say I want to put this sentence in my paper, right? Formal documents. The definition of draft resolution is that it is a formal document as a result of discussion. I want to put this in my paper, but I don't want to put it 100%, because if I put it 100%, it will be referred to as plagiarism, or in Indonesia we call it plagiat, gitu ya. I want to cite this, but I want to change the sentence. So it sounds, for example, draft resolution is a document used in a United Nations meeting that contains materials of discussions that are made by the countries. We can do that. We can do that. So we don't just copy and paste 100%, but we paraphrase it, right? We add additional information, or perhaps we take out certain words. But what we have to do is that we do not cite it 100%. All right. At the end of the draft resolution or a position paper, for example, you can put the reference. Where do you get this? Do you get this from a paper or from a book? You can put it in the position paper reference list. But in a draft resolution, we don't do a reference list or a bibliography. But still, if you cite it from any source, you can put it directly in the sentence for the draft resolution case. For example, you cite it from a convention, an international treaty. You can cite the name of the international treaty so that we know, the readers can know that the definition that you are trying to write is a definition from a certain international treaty or an international agreement or any international document. Just put the name of that document directly into the sentence. If it is a position paper, you can put the name of the document at the end of the position paper under the bibliography or the reference list section. All right, so that's about plagiarism in MUN. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking that one. Any other question, perhaps? Yes, you're welcome. Any question? Okay, before I answer the new questions, everyone, you can go to the WhatsApp group and try to download the documents. But I will, but don't worry, I will upload all of the materials and the files using a Google Drive account where it will be accessible for everyone to download. So don't worry if you, for example, have a very limited space in your computer or in your phone. There will be a Google Drive for you to download, and it will always be open for you to download, right? Okay, we have a question from Anissa from Grobogan. The question is, how is the text organization in the draft document? This is a very good question, actually. So when you want to organize your text in the draft resolution, there are several, what I would say, rules for you to follow. If you take a look at this document right here, I'm going to move myself up. This one, you can see that there's a structure, right? Each sentence, each paragraph is structured in a very, very coherent way. Ya. Kalau teman-teman lihat, paragrafnya itu rapih dan ada aturannya. Also, if you take a look very carefully, the very first word of each sentence, yeah, if you take a look at this one, it is actually italicized. Ya, dimiringin, ya. You can see that the word is being italic, and is actually a rule in MUN, right? And also in a real UN system, where you have to make the first word italic so that we can differentiate whether it is a clause or whether it is an objective clause, right? Which I will explain after this. There are two kinds of clauses in draft resolution. The first one is preambulatory clause, a clause that represents the opening facts of a paper. And then the objective clause usually refers to solution, right? If you take a look again at this one, the very first part of this paper, it explains about why this paper has to be submitted, why this paper has to be made, right? For example, if you talk about violation of human rights, then this part talks about how important it is for us to protect human rights. But the second part, which is the lower part of the paper, it contains the solution, right? Your paper has to present the solution of the problem. If you think that the problem is that human rights are being violated, then what you need to put in the lower part of the paper is the methods, the ways, the mechanisms, the solutions on how you will protect human rights so that they will no longer be violated anymore, right? So two different parts, the reasons and then also the solution. What do you think are the reasons that this paper has to be submitted? And then the second part is that we know that there is a problem, and for us to erase this problem, we have to make this solution. All right. So Anissa, I hope it answers your question. And the tax organization, more details about it, I will explain in the last class, the fourth class. We will talk about a draft resolution in a more specific way, so you can ask a lot of more questions in that session, right? Okay, I see a lot of questions are coming up. I will wait for perhaps one more question if there's any question. Feel free, everyone, to ask using the Zoom chat box or the mic, the Zoom mic. Any more questions? You can I will send a sample of all of these papers later so that you can understand further about each section. Okay, wait, I will check one more time if there's any question. Perhaps I missed one of your questions in the chat box. All right, I don't see any questions so far. Okay, wait, I'll check one more time. Okay, no question, yeah? I will move on to another definition. All right. Okay, so we know that a chair, we already know the term chair. So if you take a look at this one, this guy right here, alongside the two other women, between the left side of him and the right side of him, is what we call as the board of chairs, right? Or other terms, we also call them as board of directors. Also, sometimes we call them the dice, right? The board of dice. A chair, as you can see in the screen, is someone who is tasked to moderate and assess the delegate's performance. As I have explained earlier, the job of a chair is not only to evaluate, which means that they're going to see who the champion is, who the first rank, the second rank, but they also have a job to moderate the session. They will determine who will speak first, who will speak the second, and these are the jobs of a chair, right? While a delegate, as you can see, delegate is the ones right here. They are the participants, peserta lomba, yeah? They participate in an MUN, and they are not the chair. They don't evaluate others. They don't give them credits. They don't give them scores. They only participate. If they perform, and maybe the chair sees that the performance is excellent, they are eligible for an award. Ya, seperti lomba pada umumnya lah, the juara 1, juara 2. We also have that in MUN, right? We have the best delegate, the most outstanding. Perhaps some of you may have heard the list of awards. Those are the reasons why people participate in MUN. Some of them, the reasons why some of delegates participate in MUN is because they want to win something once they finish their MUN, right? The third definition that we have to know is the placard. Placard is basically a paper that contains your country's name, but this will be only available if you attend offline MUNs. In an online MUN using a Zoom application like this one, it's very rare for committees to send the placards to your home. So basically what you can do is to just raise hand using the Zoom feature box, right? If you take a look at the Zoom, for example, I'm raising my hand right now. There's a sign, right? There's the hand sign in my Zoom name. So delegates can use that feature whenever they want to talk, right? So these are the three definitions. The right side of the screen, you can see that this is the usual template of the room in an MUN session for around maybe 15 to 20 delegates. I once participated in an MUN where there were around 100 plus delegates. So the room definitely. Okay, so sorry for the disturbance. I will continue the slide. Sorry, the internet connection is not that good in my area. So I will continue with this one. All right, so as I have explained, we have chairs, we have placards, we have delegate. Now we will move on to the timeline, right? The flow of MB1. The first one is what we call as roll call. Whenever you attend a class in campus, right? The lecturer or the teacher will have a roll call. Ya, bahasa Indonesia itu absen. Ya, di absen dari yang huruf A sampai Z gitu ya. We will try to have an attendance list, making sure everyone is present at the time. Okay. Roll call, what you have to do is just to state whether you are present, right? Are you present in the meeting, or maybe you're not present? The other option is that you can also vote. You can also state that you're present and voting, right? Are you present and voting, or are you just present? I will just explain about this earlier after this. The second one is the general speakers list. This is basically a session where every country will talk in a general manner to talk about the topic. They will only speak the general issues of the topic that is currently being debated, right? The third one is moderated caucus. Moderated caucus basically means a session where we can propose an idea or propose a topic to be discussed, right? Unmoderated caucus, it's the same thing as moderated caucus, but the only difference is that it will not be limited by time. It will not be limited by a list of queues, a list of countries who will participate in a session. Everyone can talk in however they want, whenever they want. They can approach anyone. If you take a look at the pictures, unmoderated caucus right here is the time where every delegate can stand up. They can reach out to certain delegates. But in moderated caucus, as you can see in the picture, everyone is sitting, right? Everyone does not stand up. They can only speak when the chair allows them to, right? The last one is what we call as a voting procedure. This is a procedure where you vote for the draft resolution, and it's also the last part of the flow of MUN. All right, so I will explain one by one of the flow of MUN. The first one is, again, a roll call. If you take a look at the left side of the screen, there are two options, right? The first one is present. The second one is present and voting. Present means you can choose yes or no during a draft resolution voting, but you can also abstain. Yeah, abstain means you are not stating whether you agree or not agree. Yeah, it's a gray area. It's abu-abu, right? But in a present and voting, when you state that your country is present and voting during a roll call, it means that you are saying yes, you have to say yes, or you have to say no whenever there's a voting session in substantial topics. So you cannot choose to be abstain. Kabdur, when does a country choose to be abstained? What kind of characteristic, what kind of criteria that forces us to choose present only, and then we can choose abstain afterwards? I would say it's up to your country's preference or politics. If your foreign policy is not that consistent, sometimes you agree with this country, sometimes you agree with that country, who both have opposing views towards something, I would suggest for you to choose present. But if your country is very consistent, whatever is happening in this topic, your country will never agree with this country, then you're going to have to choose present and voting to state your consistency, to state your commitment in staying to agree or not to a certain topic, right? Roll call is the part, as you can see in the right side of the screen, roll call is the part where the chair takes the delegates' attendance list. Roll call is crucial to determine the simple majority and the quorum. Simple majority is 50% plus 1. Quorum is 2/3, 2/3 of all the total delegates. There are 2 appropriate responses, which is present and voting, right? Present means that you can abstain. You may abstain in substantial voting, but in present and voting, you're going to have to vote on both substantial and procedural voting. Kapdur, what are the differences between substantial and procedural voting? Procedural voting is a voting session where you have to vote for the topics, right? It's a matter of administrative purposes to choose whether a topic is available to be discussed or not. So there is no sign of politics, whatever. This is the time where you just have to choose, right? It's just for procedural matters. So you're going to have to choose, even if you choose present earlier. But if in substantial voting, it means that you are voting on an issue that may violate your national interest, on an issue that is important for your country. This is what we call as substantial voting, right? In a substantial voting, if you choose present, you may abstain in that voting, which means that you are not agreeing, you're not saying yes, and also at the same time, you're not disagreeing or saying yes. You are abstaining in that voting. You don't want to say yes because you don't want to be considered the friend of that country, and you also don't want to say no because you don't want to be considered as an enemy of that country. So to play safe, you can choose the abstain option, which is a very common option in foreign policy discussion. And there's no need for you to be worried. For example, if you choose abstain, then it means that you're not consistent. No, it's a matter of foreign policy. If your country in its foreign policy actually wants to be abstain on this matter, then in real MUN, you're going to have to follow that, right? You're going to have to be abstain as well. All right. Okay, there's a lot of information in a couple of minutes. I want you to maybe perhaps ask a question if there's any question regarding roll call. Any question about roll call? No, no question. I think the reason why my internet is lagging is because I use that, that feature where I'm in the presentation. So it takes a lot of internet quota. So I'll use this for now. Any question from anyone? Okay, I'll wait for 1 minute until 3 o'clock, and then we will try to continue. Since we still have, we still have around 20 slides. I'll try to make this fast, okay, so everyone can ask a question. Okay, there's one. Wait. All right. I think my internet is back again. So I'm gonna choose that same, same feature where I'm in the presentation. I feel like I can present better in this in this feature. Wait. Okay, what slide was that? It was this one. All right. Okay, there's one from another delegate here. One question. Sir, if we choose present and voting, does that mean that our country strongly agrees or disagrees towards the general issue? The answer is yes. So when you're present and voting, it means that your country is that 100% sure that they are agreeing towards an issue or disagreeing about an issue. But if you choose to be present and then you choose abstain, it means that your country is somehow still, plan lah ya, 50%, 50%. There's a chance that I will not, there's a chance that your country will not agree anymore, but there's also a chance that probably your country will disagree later in the future. So if you're not sure, if your country is not sure, then you can choose present and choose abstain. All right. Okay, I will answer the question. More question? Any other question? All right, so guys, if my internet is going bad again, I just can wait. Don't leave the Zoom because it takes probably 15 seconds for me to connect again to the Wi-Fi. So just wait if any case in after this, my internet goes bad again. All right, I'll wait for one more question if there's any. All right. Okay, so I don't see more question. I'm gonna move on to this one. All right, wait. Okay, where am I gonna put myself? Okay, I'm gonna put here. All right, general speakers list, or sometimes we shorten it as GSL. Yeah, GSL. GSL is a part or is a session where you speak generally and you don't have any specific topic to discuss. Maksudnya apa sih, Kak Abdur? What does it mean when you speak general? It means that you only touch the surface of the discussion. If you are, for example, you have a topic about vaccination, you only talk about why vaccination is important, why vaccination is a must, why vaccination has to be done right now. You don't talk about what kind of vaccines, you don't talk about when the vaccination will happen. You just talk about why is it important and why every country must do it now. So no specific topic. It's a general speakers list. You can talk about any topic, but in a general way. Secondly, you can reaffirm your stances and solutions from the position paper. Since not every country has a chance, well, actually, not every MUN conference allows countries to see each other's position paper. You can reaffirm your issue stances and solution in the general speakers list. You will be given 90 seconds, which is around 1.5 minutes. If there is the remaining time, you could do what we call as yielding. Yielding means that you have a remaining time and you don't know what to do with it. There are 3 options. You can yield it to other delegates. For example, I have 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes. I only talk for around 1 minute. The remaining 30 seconds, I can give that to my friend, to other delegates. For example, I'm Indonesia. The 30 seconds, I'm giving it to the delegate of France. Then after we finish, we can just speak to the chair saying that, chair, we would like to yield the time to the delegate of France. And then France will have your 30 seconds to speak about their national interest. After France finishes, it does not mean that France cannot participate again in the general speakers list, because it's only a 30 seconds additional time given by me earlier. It's not France's original time to speak in the general speakers list, right? That's the first option. The second one is the chair. You can yield it to chair, which means that you no longer want to use that time. You don't want to give it to other delegates. You don't want to open a question and answer. You are yielding it back to chair, which means that the chair has the authority to let other delegates to replace your position and move on to the general speakers list. The third last thing is the POI, points of information. You have 30 seconds left and you want to make it as a question and answer session. So you are offering other delegates to ask you a question, and then you will answer the question during that 30 seconds time remaining, right? So there are 3 options again, but this is only happens in general speakers list, yeah? Other delegates, chair, and POI. The more specific details, we will discuss this in the third class. In the third class, we will talk about how we're going to do it, right? How are we supposed to yield? What kind of sentences that we have to speak, right? And there will be more specific details on that on the third class, right? So I can only speak the general part on this one, since there will be a specific class on this, which we will do in around maybe a week or 2 weeks from now. Okay, so that's it about general speakers list. I'll wait for questions again. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, I'll wait for maybe to question it, since we already have one coming. All right, any question? One more maybe. Okay, I'll wait for one more and just pray that my internet connection will not go down after this. And okay, only one? Okay, I'll wait for others to ask a question. Okay, I'll answer the first one first. Yeah. There's this one. All right, sir, how do we know if our country is how do we know if our country sometimes agrees or disagrees with other countries' policy, for example? What Indonesia choose something? Because okay, so the answer is this. When you choose whether to be present or present and voting, it's a matter of your opinion, right? So it's not other countries' policy. It's a tool for you to use to assess your country's perspective. For example, if Indonesia right now agrees with vaccination, but there's a possibility that in the future Indonesia will not agree anymore, then you have to choose abstain or present, right? So it's not about your country's perspective towards other countries' policy. No, when you want to choose whether you are present or present and voting, it's a matter of your country's perspective and not other countries' perspective. All right, so that's how you know if your country sometimes agree or not. Another part that you have to know is that how do we ensure ourselves that we are not 100% sure on this topic? How do we know if we are masih pelin-pelan gitu ya? How do we know if we're not 100% convinced about a certain topic? What you can do is to assess the history of your country's policy. For example, Indonesia this year agrees, but last year in 2021 they don't agree. But again in 2020 they were back at agreeing again. In just 3 years time, there are 2 times where Indonesia shifted their focus of concentration whether to agree or not. Then you can assume that Indonesia is perhaps better to choose the abstain option instead of the present and voting. All right, so that's the way for you to assess whether your country is pelin-pelan or not gitu ya. Okay, I'll wait for more questions. There's one new question coming. One more maybe. One more question. Okay. If you are confused and maybe you want to ask questions later, I will be 100% available for you to chat, whether via group or via personal chat. You can just ask me, or maybe you mention me in the group, Kapdur, I want to ask a question about this. Feel free to do it at any time during the MUN school, right? Which is around 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. Why do I encourage it now? Because after the MUN school period, I will not be available to be consulted anymore since I have to focus on the next school batch. Okay, so during this time, I will highly encourage you to ask any question regarding MUN, right? Okay, I'll wait for one more since we have a couple of minutes left. One more question about a general speakers list. Okay, maybe before I answer the last question, these are the three most important aspects of general speakers list. Yeah, jadi this is very important that you have to speak generally, and then for you to reaffirm your stance on solution, and that you will only be given 90 seconds maximum. There will be no additional time. But if you think that you cannot fulfill all the 90 seconds, you feel like you're only speaking for 45 seconds because that's all the time you need, then you can use the remaining time for the 3 options of yielding. Yeah, chair, other delegates, and POI. Okay. Okay. One last question. If there is still remaining time, but we don't want to yield it to other delegates, chairs or POI, what should we do? Oh, so if you don't want to yield it, you have remaining time, but you don't want to do anything about it, the option is for you to yield it to the chair. So when you yield to the chair, it basically means that you don't want to do anything about the remaining time. Yeah, so just give it to the chair. The chair will not use it for anything. They will consider the remaining time as angus gitu ya. It will not be used anymore. and we will move on to the next delegate who are in queue. Ya, di antriannya ada siapa? The next delegate after Indonesia, misalkan ada France, then France will be taking up Indonesia's position after that. But France will not use Indonesia remaining time because Indonesia chooses to yield it to the chair, right? When they yield it to the chair, it means that France can start their own 90 seconds time. If they have another remaining time, they can yield it to the 3 options. If France yields it to chair again, it means that the next delegate after France will use the original 90 seconds. All right. Okay, I see that there is one more question. One more question. Okay. Does every country have the chance to speak in the session or just certain countries? Okay, this is a very good question. So every country has the chance to speak in the session, right? If there are 20 countries, then 20 countries will speak in the general speakers list. However, sometimes the chair feels that the time is too much. It's time for us to move on to the moderated caucus. So for example, the general speakers list has 20 countries. In the 11 countries, they decide to not continue the general speakers list. They will move on to the moderated caucus, right? But once the moderated caucus finishes, then the general speakers list can commence again. Yeah. When the general speakers list commences or starts again, the first delegate who will speak is the last delegate who does not get the chance earlier to speak. Yeah. For example, in the 11 queue is France, but when France wants to speak, the chair does not let France to speak because we have to move on to moderated caucus. Then after the moderated caucus, it will be France's chance to speak after that. All right, so that's how you understand general speakers list. It is a speakers list whenever a moderated caucus has finished, or whenever a general speakers or whenever an unmoderated caucus finishes, and we have more time to fill in the remaining time, then we can go back to general speakers list. However, this is a very flexible policy. It is up to the chair whether to be in general speakers list again or whether they want to commence to the next session. Maybe they feel like, oh, I think we need to go to unmoderated caucus one more time. It's their discretion, right? It's what we call as discretion. It's up to the chair whether to go back to general speakers list or to have another unmoderated caucus or just move on eventually to the voting session. It depends on the chair. All right. Okay, I think there's a lot of question over here. I'm gonna wait one more time. So yeah, that's how you understand about general speakers list. Okay, this is the do's and don'ts. It's basically just, you know, the general regulations. What you have to understand about general speakers list is that tell your country stance briefly, right? As the name suggests, it's a general speakers list. But what you don't have to, what you are not supposed to do is to not be, is to be repetitive, right? Don't be repetitive. Don't repeat what other delegates has spoken, right? Tell the background issue briefly. Tell your solution briefly. Don't speak too long, right? Don't speak too specific. It's very obvious. Why are we not encouraging for you to speak too long? Because first, you only have 90 seconds, right? You only have 90 seconds and you have to use your time as efficient as possible, right? As efficient as possible, and make sure that you are strategizing your time based on your country's perspective. For example, if Indonesia, for example, your country is Indonesia and you are highly related, you know, in terms of friendship with Malaysia, you can choose your remaining time to be yielded to Malaysia as a strategy for both of you to encourage your agenda towards a topic, right? Whether you agree or not. It's one of the methods for you to strategize your way to win in the UN, right? So you can yield your time to Malaysia, and Malaysia will support Indonesia's previous arguments, and that's how you gain more votes from other countries. All right, that's just strategy. Remember that MUN is politics. MUN is politics. It's about how you maintain relation with others, right? How you encourage others to join your side, how you encourage other countries to be in the same page for you on a certain topic, right? So that's the basic do's and don'ts and general speakers list. All right. Again, any questions so far about do's and don'ts? I'm gonna ask every question in every slide, all right, making sure that everyone understands what the material is about, since it's pretty hard to consume the materials on this, and for you to grasp what MUN is all about, yeah, because MUN is, again, it's politics, and for you to understand politics, you need to understand every single details about MUN itself. Okay, I see one question is coming. Maybe one more question from the delegates of today's class. So, all right. Before I answer the question, again, in regards to the general speakers list, it's only 90 seconds, right? It's only 90 seconds. And sometimes you're only given 3 chances to speak, right? Or maybe just 4 chances to speak. So you don't have all the time for you to speak in general speakers list. And remember that general speakers list is the only time where you can yield your remaining time. In moderated caucus, you cannot yield your remaining time. Once you tell the chair that you finish and you still have, for example, 15 seconds, those 15 seconds cannot be yielded to chair, cannot be yielded to POI or other delegates. It's only in the general speakers list where you can do that. All right, so remember, yielding time is only available during general speakers list. All right, okay. So one more question from, all right, I'll see first. Okay. How do I know if Malaysia, for example, agrees with my country? Oh, this is a really good question. Right. So how do we know if one country agrees with our country? How do we know that we have a friend? Right? How do we know if we want to be friends with other countries? Or maybe how do we know if certain countries are on board or on the same page with us? These are very common questions that it seems common, but you have to understand the gravity of the discussion, right? Because it's about determining whether your country is in line with other countries, right? And on that, what I would say is that you have to research first. You have to research first the history between the relation of your country and that country, and to determine whether you are on board on a specific topic. So it does not mean that any country, for example, Indonesia, only agrees with ASEAN countries, for example. It's not always the case, actually. We have to be on board. Yes, we have to support each other because we are in the same organization. But when it comes to topics that Indonesia is strictly committed to not agree with, then even an ASEAN country cannot be in the same page with us. For example, the issue of nuclear weapons, for example, Indonesia highly opposes that. We don't want any nuclear weapons in the area of Southeast Asia. So if, for example, just for example, if there is an ASEAN member country who is our friends, our neighboring country, says that nuclear weapons should be in our area, then Indonesia cannot just, agree automatically with that country just because we are in the same regional organization, right? So sometimes it's about foreign policy, it's about principle as well, and you have to assess from a lot of things, right? You cannot just assess between just, okay, Malaysia is our neighboring country, we agree in everything. No, it's not the case. You have to consider other aspects as well. Sometimes even country that is far away from Indonesia, and since they are very far away, we cannot we don't have same characteristics, right? Or we're from different cultures, and that we maybe have different languages, right? And but when it comes to a specific topic, we 100% agree with one another, right? For example, Indonesia and Brazil, right? When it comes to the exports of coffee, right? The coffee beans that we have and that Brazil has, we are on the same page on that, even though we are, kilometers, miles, thousands of miles apart. We are in the same page with that. We are friends with Brazil when it comes to that topic, right? So I would say there are 3 criteria. First, you have to assess the topic first, right? Look from the topic, not from the structure, not from the ideology of the country. Are they, are they democracy, or are they communist country or whatever? Don't assess from that. Assess from the topic. Secondly, assess whether you and that country are in the same organization regionally. And then the third one is that try to assess that country's policy, whether does that country's policy violate our national interests. So these are the 3 aspects that you have to consider before you try to determine whether a country is friends with us or not. All right, so a lot of aspects, but it can be stemmed down into 3 basic aspects that you have to consider before you're trying to figure out who your friends are in an MUN. All right. Okay, I'll wait for one more if there's any. All right, I see one more here. What should we include in our brief background issue or solution? Or what should we add or don't add in our background issue? All right, so background issue. Background issue is, the reasons why you have to put a certain solution, right? You have to determine whether you are, agree with something, right? Or whether you don't agree with something. So the question in regards to what do we have to include in a brief background issue is only the most important ones, right? Only put the most important issues in your background, right? So only the most important, only the most relevant. Yeah, the most relevant, the most important, but most importantly, apart from all of these 2, it's the one that connects with your country's national interests. Yeah, your country's national interest determines the background of the issue. If it is not your national priority, you don't need to put it in the background issue, because you only put the most important priorities in the background issue, right? Only put the most important to your country, not to others, but only to your country. If it is very important, then you need to put it right away in the background issue. What you don't need to add is the one that is definitely the other side of that aspect, the one that is not relevant, not important. Maybe it is important, but it's not your priority. So you have to assess from all of those 3, right? To determine what kind of topics that can be included in the background issue. All right, I hope it answers the question. I'll wait for maybe one more if there's any. All right. Okay, I'll move on since we have so many limited time. All right, moderator caucus. This is the part where we will discuss more details in the 3rd class. This is not general speakers list, so you cannot yield your time, and you have to talk specifically. So it's the other, the other side of general speakers list, where in general speakers list you only have to speak generally. In moderated caucus, you only no, you have to speak specifically, right? You cannot talk generally in this part. All right, and this is the time where you propose a topic. So not all topics will be discussed in a session, only topics that pass the 50% plus one vote. So for example, I am proposing that maybe we should talk about vaccination programs in villages, di desa-desa gitu ya. Perlu adanya program vaksin. But this topic is, it's not something that can just pass automatically. It has to be voted. Every proposal has to be voted. And only those that reaches the 50% plus one that will be considered as the topic. This will be very complex. It will be explained in the third class, but what you have to know is that there's a 50% plus one threshold, right? If there are 30 countries in a session, then there has to be at least 16 countries agreeing to you that your proposal is accepted. All right, it's as simple as that, but the practical implementation is quite different. We will explain about that in the third class, right? Next part, moderated caucus. All right, so this is how you say when you want to propose a motion. All right, a topic in MUN in moderated caucus is what we call as a motion. What you have to do is you have to state your country. You have to state what kind of motion, for how many time, and also what kind of topic that you wish to talk about. For example, delegates of France, my country, for example, delegates of France would like to propose a moderated caucus for 10 minutes total time and 1 minute speaking time each. So if there is 10 minutes in total and every delegate has 1 minute to talk, that means that there will be 10 countries, right? 10 countries who will talk in this motion that is proposed by France, right? The topic that France wishes to discuss, that it proposes to discuss, is the topic about root cause of the issue, right? So it depends on what France thinks as the most priority at the time, right? Kabdur, are we limited or are we restricted when it comes to proposing a topic? The answer is yes. You cannot just put any topic in however you want. You can only put a topic that is in line with the general topic, and then also a topic that can, that can accommodate all countries' issues. So make sure not to be too political on this one. Make sure not to be too sensitive on this one. If you want to choose a topic that is sensitive, make sure to wrap up or make the topic more acceptable to countries who probably will be affected by the topic. All right, since not every country wants to talk about a certain issue, but you still have to win their hearts so that you can reach the 50% plus one vote. So what you have to do is to craft the name of the solution so that even the opposing countries can still agree with this topic, right? I hope it's understandable. This is the do's and don'ts. Oh, sorry. Any question about the moderated caucus? No? All right. In moderated caucus, the motion should be simple. You cannot jump agenda. If you are talking about topic A, you have to stick with topic A until topic A finishes. You cannot talk about topic B if topic A has not been finished. It is make sure for yourself, make yourself to be, understandable in a very, very easy way so that everyone can hear you, everyone can understand you. And don't propose a motion that is already proposed. Don't be redundant, right? Give speech based on the motion. If the motion is A, then whenever you are allowed to speak by the chair, then speak about A. Don't speak about B, don't speak about C, etc., etc. Right? Unmoderated, as you can see in the picture right here, everyone is standing up. In offline MUN, everyone is standing up. You can approach anyone. You can talk in how many minutes that you want. It's very flexible. The only restriction is that you are given certain minutes. For example, you're given 20 minutes. You can talk to anyone under that 20 minutes about any topic, right? Only contains the total time. But in online MUN, since you cannot, meet each other, it will be in a form of breakout groups, right? Okay. How do you propose it? It's basically the same, just change the name. And also you don't need to specify the exact time, only the total time. Delegate of Mauritius would like to propose an unmoderated caucus for 15 minutes, for example. As easy as that. Kabdur, when can we propose unmoderated caucus? Usually in Indonesia, you can propose unmoderated caucus or UMC after you have 3 moderated caucuses. Once you have 3 moderated caucuses, you can now propose for UMC. If in the very first session of MUN in day 1, you already propose a UMC, sometimes the chair will not accept you, will not allow you to do that. because we haven't talked about anything and you already proposed a UMC, because UMC is usually a place for you to debate things that are already debated previously, right? That's the UMC. The do's and don'ts, definitely be diplomatic, listen to others, try to create a block. Block means a group of countries that share the same interests. So basically, MUN is about ngegeng sebenarnya. You have to select several countries that share the same interests with you. Since not country all has the same opinion, you can only be in one gang, in one group with the countries that share the same interests. Ya, kalau beda pendapat jangan satu grup. Yeah, even if you're friends, for example, you're besties with this country, but in reality, the country is not really bestie with your country, so you cannot be in the same group for the sake of MUN. Yeah, don't be too dominant. You know, let others speak. Don't be too dominant. Don't cut someone when they speak. Don't be too unethical. Right? These are the important guides for you to be in unmoderated caucus. All right, we are approaching to the last slides. Maybe I will give you 1 minute for the question floor to open. Any question so far? All right, I see one. What is the benefit of passing a topic in moderated caucus? The benefit will be very, very big, since if you are active in passing a topic in moderated caucus, the chair will evaluate your performance as very good. And if you are evaluated as a very performing delegate, then you will be eligible to win an award in MUN, right? But apart from that, definitely if you pass a lot of topics in moderated caucus, you will gain a lot of new delegates who are on the same page with you, which will make your journey easier to lead a sponsor or lead a draft resolution later in the part of the conference, right? So I will highly suggest for you to be active. You know, don't just ask questions, don't just answer questions, but again, try to be an active delegate who leads the conference, who, you know, gathers other delegates to be on the same page. The chair will see that and will highly regard that as a very plus point, and you can probably win an award in MUN. Because remember, even though it is a conference, it's also at the same time a competition. So you have to, you know, be more alert when it comes to gaining the plus points from the chair, right? I hope it answers the question. I will move on to the tips for speech. Grab attention. Grab attention, it basically means that you have to make sure the delegates like you. Yeah, make sure the delegates love you with the interesting grabbing attention way. For example, don't try to start a speech like this. Delegates, we are in the middle of the pandemic. We have to find solutions. We hope everyone here already has their solutions. It's very boring, right? A speech like that. But when you enter a speech with facts, when you enter a speech with, you know, very surprising opening, delegates will start to listen to you, right? Because you seem very convincing. For example, a speech like this. For example, I'm approaching the stage and now I'm starting the speech like this. 90% of countries have not started their vaccination, but the vaccination rate in every country is not even slowing down. Are we going to end the pandemic with a very non-ambitious way when vaccination is already the only solution for us to settle the COVID-19 problem? Then we have to think again. Nah, itu cara-cara untuk kita memulai gitu ya. Maybe we throw out facts, maybe we throw out questions. Try to open your speech in a very, very pleasing way so everyone is, you know, agreeing with you later on, right? Second one, structured well. The third one is clear and on point. Don't be too redundant, and everything will be counted with a timer. So make sure you're not speaking too much, right? And make sure also you're not speaking too short, right? Okay, that's almost the last. Again, use formal suits. Don't use shirts. Use third persons. Don't say I agree with this. Don't say I agree with that. Say our country agrees with this. Indonesia agrees with this. Thailand agrees with this. Use third person. Don't use I, don't use me, don't use my. Always use third person. Third one, definitely research. You cannot just, you cannot just attend an MUN and then hoping that you know everything, because you don't know everything. You have to make a research. All right. Okay. The next one is be diplomatic, speak up, and always prepare and respect the chair. The don'ts: don't wear casual t-shirts, don't be too late, don't talk when the chair has not allowed you to do so, and don't panic, right? It's just regular, do's and don'ts that you find in MUN. Tips for research: know the mandate. If you are in the UN Women Council, try to learn the mandate of that council, what the council can do and what the council cannot do. If you already know what the council cannot do, then don't propose a solution where the council cannot do that. Only propose a solution where the council can actually do that, right? If your council cannot give out money to the delegates, to the member states, then don't give a solution where your council has to give money on the delegates, right? Okay, so this is this is very shocking actually. So we have a homework in our school system, but it's not mandatory. Yang nggak wajib. So kalau nggak sempet nggak apa-apa. If you don't have the time, feel free not to do it. This is only a homework if you want to do it, right? So what is the homework? You can make an essay, make a list, make maybe a poster, a poster, anything that becomes a research on your own topic, right? Jadi bikin apapun, mau esai, mau PPT, mau poster, mau infographics, anything that contains a research, ya, that contains a research about a topic. Contoh, kamu milih Indonesia, topiknya COVID, bikinlah riset tentang itu dalam bentuk apapun, ya, esai, infografis, apapun. Kak, I want to choose other countries. Sure, you want to choose France, for example, and the topic, for example, is nuclear weapons. Then try to find any research about France and any research about nuclear topics that is related to France, and then make a summary of it in the form of essay, PowerPoint, list, anything, right? There is no minimum page, no maximum page. You can make one page, you can even make half of a page. It's super, super flexible. What we want you to do is just to, try to develop your research skills. Can you research? Can you do research based on, quantifiable parameters where we can assess whether you are doing it right or not? Yeah. So again, this is not obligatory. Ini nggak wajib. If you have the time, feel free to do it. Once you're done, you can send it personally to me, or you can send it to the group and mention me on that group. Yeah. Feel free to do it and submit it at any time selama MUN schoolnya masih ada, masih berlangsung. Yeah. Once the MUN school ends, there's no need for you to make the homework again, because I will not be mentoring you anymore. So the deadline will be anytime as long as the MUN school still commences. Gitu ya. Okay, that will be all. I will close the meeting by saying this very, very, very famous quote by GMMUN. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Ya, nggak perlu jadi orang sukses untuk memulai, tapi untuk sukses kalian harus mulai cepat, gitu ya. So you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Ya, untuk memulai nggak harus jadi orang sukses dulu, tapi untuk jadi orang sukses harus mulai dari sekarang. Alright, before I end the session, any question about the whole session of the day before I end the meeting, since we have approached the maximum time? Yes, and yes, you can also see on the Zoom chat box from our team, there's a absence form, ya, ada absen di situ. Teman-teman silakan isi ya. Jangan lupa di screenshot ya. Don't forget to screenshot this, because it is the proof that you have attended our class. Kak Abdur, ini absennya wajib apa enggak? You can ask the question to the committee, since my job here is only to mentor you about the materials. So regarding administrative purposes of the MUN school, you can ask our team. Yeah, we have Nisa in our group. You can ask her about the GMMUN school administration, and regarding presence, feedback, and all that. You can ask Nisa afterwards. Okay. If there's no question, I will end the session right now. We will vote again. Ya, kita akan vote lagi untuk kelas berikutnya. We will vote again for the next class. We will find the schedule where everyone can join. And then once we finish the voting, seperti biasa, nanti kita baru mulai lagi. Ya, so it will be around 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. Ya, jadi bisa diluangin aja waktunya. It will definitely be weekend atau weekday, tapi setelah jam 12 ya. So because I can see that some of you all ada yang masih sekolah, ada yang masih kuliah. So I'm assuming that setelah siang tuh biasanya lebih fleksibel gitu ya. Oke, itu aja teman-teman. The recording will be available after this. Yeah, I will share the link and also the link towards the Google Drive. And I will see you in the next session. Thank you semuanya. Dadah. Aku tutup ya.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sama-sama.
Thank you very much, Kak.